Good evening, friends, and welcome to Zooming Past History, the time when we get to meet the famous and maybe the infamous in history, or maybe just the famous adjacent, and ask them the questions we are dying to know the answer to. So tonight's mystery guest, sir, could you please tell us your name,
Ben Cohen,
occupation?
retired. I was an innkeeper.
In Bethlehem.
Right.
And in fact, it was your inn where Jesus was born.
Oh, that's right. Well, not in the inn itself. It was out back.
In the animal shed.
Yeah, I still get a lot of flack for that.
How do you mean?
Well, I mean that people still criticize me for not having room in the inn. They say to me, you couldn't give a pregnant woman a room? You couldn't give a room to the woman pregnant with the divine child? Couldn't even spare a broom closet for the baby Jesus.
And how do you respond to that?
Well, I say, well, look, first off, it wasn't just me. If you go back, you'll see that every inn was full.
Because of the census.
Census. It was the foot races, Bethlehem versus Cana. Also, there was a touring theater troupe from Greece, only appearance in Judea. The city was packed. We had reservations for months.
But Mary was pregnant.
I had 3 pregnant ladies at the inn that night. One was giving birth when Joe and Mary showed up. She was down the hall screaming at the top of her lungs, cursing like you wouldn't believe. Her husband tried to encourage her to push. She kicked him in the groin. Think about that. She's crowning a baby and she takes the time to put her foot into her husband's testicles. So maybe you'll understand why even if I had a room, I wouldn't have been in a rush to give it to those 2.
But you ended up by letting them go out to the animal shed.
Well, that was an accident.
How so?
Well, Joseph comes in and asks for a room. I tell him we're all out of rooms and we have been for months. Foot races, theater groupies and such. And he says, come on, please. I've got a pregnant lady with me. And I say, you hear that down the hall? I'm full up with pregnant ladies. And he says, this baby is important. And I say, hey, buddy, I don't care if it's the Son of God. I don't have any rooms.
Oh, so there's some irony there.
Well, I guess so. Well, then he says, look, we'll take anything. And so I say, as a joke, all right, you can go sleep with the animals if you like. And he says, fine, and slaps some money down on the counter.
So he called your bluff.
Yeah. When I say, look, I was kidding about that. And he says, my wife's water broke in your lobby. Oh, what could I do? I pointed him in the direction of the animals.
Oh, well, it's better than giving birth in the street.
Well, I suppose so. But, you know, if the reason they were in Bethlehem was because of the census, well, then he had family in the area, right? I mean, it's his ancestral home and all that. He can't say to a cousin, hey, give us a couch. There's some family dynamics going on here that have been conveniently left unexamined, if you ask me.
Joseph had a lot on his mind.
Well, he must have.
So the baby is born and they place him in the manger.
Which, by the way, I told them not to do.
Why?
Well, because how unsanitary is that? Do you know what a manger is?
Well, as far as I know, it's the place you put the infant Messiah.
It's a food trough for animals.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, interesting is right. Let me ask you. So your baby is born, and the first thing you do is put him in an open container filled with grain and covered in oxen drool. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Well, you did have them out with the animals. Their options were limited.
I rented cribs. I asked Joseph, do you want a crib? And he said, no, we're fine. And then he sets the kid in the food box. I say to him, "You're new at this, aren't you?"
Well, in his defense, he was.
Well, and then somebody says, "Well, look at the animals. They're adoring the baby." And I say, "Adoring? Hell, they're wondering why there's a baby in their food."
Well, on the other hand, the image of the baby in the uh, food box is a classic one.
Well, yeah, I mention that when people get on me about not giving Joseph and Mary a room. I tell them that having a Christmas carol called Away in a Hotel Room doesn't quite have the same ring to it. They never have anything to say to that.
It's said that a star appeared on the night when Jesus was born. Did you see it?
No, I was too busy trying to convince Joseph to rent a crib.
Oh, it's said that it was bright enough that led the three wise men to your inn.
Well, three men showed up at the inn. I don't know how wise they were.
How do you mean?
Well, the baby is born, right? And then these guys show up and they say, "We have brought gifts for the child." And I say, "Well, that's nice. What did you bring?" And they say, "We have brought gold and frankincense and myrrh." And I say, "You gotta be kidding."
What's wrong with that?
Well, let me quote another Christmas song for you. A child shivers in the cold. Let us bring him silver and gold." Really? Silver and gold? And not, I don't know, a blanket? A newborn infant is exhibiting signs of possible hypothermia, and your response is to give him cold metal objects. Whoever wrote that song needs a smack upside the head.
You're saying the gifts were inappropriate.
Well, what's wrong with diapers? A nice jumper or two, a baby Bjorn. They were riding around on a donkey, you know? A baby Bjorn would have come in handy. Have you ever in your life gone to a baby shower where someone says, "Congratulations on the baby. Here's some perfume"? No, because most people have more sense than that.
I think the idea is that the gifts were fit for a king.
Yes, a king who first pooped in my animal's manger. I would have appreciated a gift of diapers.
Point taken.
Well, and another thing, they brought these expensive gifts. But do you ever hear about how Joseph and Mary and Jesus were anything but poor, or at the most working class?
Now that you mention it, no.
Exactly. Well, I think what happened is these three guys showed up and they said, "Here are all these expensive gifts we got your baby. Oh, and by the way, we happen to know that King Herod thinks your baby is a threat and plans to kill every kid younger than 2 years of age, just to be sure. So you better go." Oh, Egypt is nice this time of year. What? You're traveling by donkey? Well, you can't take all of these expensive gifts with you. We'll just hold on to them for now. Write us a letter when you get settled and we'll mail them. And then they never do.
I don't think there's scriptural support for that theory.
Well, I'm not saying I have any evidence. All I'm saying is it makes sense.
Well, after the three wise men, were there other visitors?
Whew, yeah, we got a little crowded. Animal sheds aren't designed for a large amount of foot traffic. And that kid showed up with a drum, and I said, "All right, fine, we're done."
Well, the song of that incident seems to suggest the drum went over pretty well.
Well, let me ask you, you're a parent, your child has just been born, he's tired, you're tired, people won't leave you alone. And then some delinquent comes by and unloads a snare solo on your baby in your baby's ear. Does this go over well with you?
Probably not. No.
Well, there you go.
So, after the birth, did your inn benefit at all from the notoriety?
Not really. Jesus kind of slipped off everybody's radar for what, 30 years, 35?
Something like that.
Right. So there wasn't much benefit there. Well, I got some mileage out of telling the story about the crazy couple who rented my animal shed and the visitors and the drumming, but I mostly told it to friends. Then, just as I'm about to retire, someone tells me of this hippie preacher in Jerusalem who got into trouble with the Romans. And I say, hey, I think I know that guy. I think he was born in my shed. And then, well, you know what the Romans did to him?
Yes.
Romans. Well, then I sold the inn to my nephew and retired to Joppa. By the time Jesus became really famous, I was out of the game. Well, then my nephew sold the inn and they put a church there.
The Church of the Nativity.
Have you been?
Oh, I have, yes.
Well, it's nice.
Mm.
I like the inn better, of course.
Well, looking back, would you have done anything differently?
I would have comped Joseph the Crib.
That still would have changed the Christmas Carol.
Well, I know, but look, you didn't have to wash out that manger.
Ooh. So, folks, you never know where zooming through history will end us up. Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Merry Christmas.